Sarah Chen had carried a lot of things in her 28 years. Groceries for her elderly neighbors back in Sacramento, her little brother's hopes when their parents died. And now, in the scorching heat of Afghanistan, she carried ammunition, 50 pounds of it, to be exact. The other members of SEAL Team 6 barely looked at her as she hauled the heavy packs from the supply truck to the staging area. To them, she was just another support specialist, not a real operator. Not one of them. "Hey, Chen, make sure those mags are facing the right way this time," called out Petty Officer Jake Morrison, a smirk playing on his weathered face. The other SEALs chuckled. Sarah had made that mistake once, 3 months ago, and they never let her forget it. "Yes, Petty Officer," she replied quietly, her jaw tight. She had been a designated marksman in the Army before volunteering for this joint task force assignment. Back at Fort Benning, she had outshot half the men in her unit. But here, attached to the most elite fighting force in the world, she was just the ammo mule, the woman who restocked their magazines and stayed behind while they went on missions. Lieutenant Commander David Torres, the team leader, was the only one who treated her with basic respect. He was a weathered veteran with gray streaking his dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. "Don't let them get to you, Chen," he said quietly, stopping beside her. "You're doing good work." "Thank you, sir," she said. But they both knew good work meant staying invisible. That night, in the small operations base outside Kandahar, Sarah cleaned her rifle. It was a habit she couldn't break, even though she rarely fired it anymore. The M110 semi-automatic sniper rifle had been her companion through 2 deployments. She knew every scratch on its surface, every quirk of its trigger pull. "Still playing with your toy?" Morrison walked past with 2 other SEALs. "You know you're not going out tomorrow, right? We need someone to guard the coffee maker," the others laughed. Sarah said nothing, just kept running the cleaning cloth along the barrel. She had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. Not with words, anyway. The mission brief came at 0500 hours. Sarah sat in the back of the room as Torres laid out the plan. A high-value target, a Taliban commander named Khalid Samadi, was holed up in a compound 15 miles northeast. Intelligence suggested he was planning an attack on a nearby village that cooperated with coalition forces. "Chen, you'll be on QRF at the base," Torres said, referring to the Quick Reaction Force. "Standard loadout. We should be back by nightfall." Translation: "Stay behind and wait." Sarah nodded. She had expected nothing else. As the team prepared their gear, she loaded their magazines with the same careful precision she always did. Each bullet placed correctly, each magazine checked twice. It was her job, and she did it perfectly, even if no one noticed. The helicopters took off at dawn, their rotors beating the air into submission. Sarah watched from the base perimeter as they became dark specks against the brightening sky. Then she waited. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, turning the sky white with heat. Sarah stayed in the operations center, monitoring radio traffic. The mission was proceeding as planned. The team had infiltrated the compound. They had eyes on the target, then everything went wrong. "Contact! Contact! We're taking heavy fire from multiple positions!" Morrison's voice crackled over the radio, the professional calm cracking. "They were waiting for us." "It's an ambush!" Sarah's heart hammered as she listened to the chaos unfold. The Taliban commander had been tipped off. What was supposed to be a quick capture mission had turned into a desperate fight for survival. "We've got 3 wounded." Torres's voice cut through the noise. Peterson took one in the leg. "Rodriguez and Hawkins are hit. We need extraction now." The operations officer immediately began coordinating helicopter support, but Sarah knew what he would say before he said it. "Extraction birds are 20 minutes out. There's a dust storm moving in from the west. Could be delayed, 20 minutes. In a firefight, that was an eternity." "Sir," Sarah heard herself say. "Let me go." The operations officer, a Marine captain named Webb, looked at her like she'd suggested flying there herself. "Specialist Chen." "You're not—" "I'm qualified," she interrupted, something she never did. "I can shoot. I can help." Webb hesitated. He knew her record, even if the SEALs didn't. But sending a support specialist into a hot zone to reinforce SEAL Team 6? It was unorthodox. It was risky. Torres's voice came over the radio again, strained now. "We can't hold this position. They're on the rooftops. We need a sniper to clear those positions, or we're not making it to the Elza. Webb looked at Sarah, really looked at her. Get your rifle. He said the helicopter ride to the compound was the longest 15 minutes of Sarah's life. She sat wedged between two door gunners, her M110 rifle across her lap, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Below, the Afghan landscape rushed past in shades of brown and gray. Somewhere down there, SEAL Team 6 was fighting for their lives. And she was going to help them. The pilot's voice crackled in her headset. 1 minute out! LZ is 300 meters from the compound. You'll have to cover that on foot. It's hot down there, Chen. Real hot. Understood, Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The helicopter flared hard, kicking up a storm of dust. Before it even touched down, Sarah was moving. She jumped out, keeping low, and ran toward the sound of gunfire. The compound was a typical Afghan structure, mud brick walls surrounding a central courtyard. But the buildings around it had been turned into fighting positions. She could see muzzle flashes from at least 4 rooftops. Her radio crackled. Chen, this is Torres. What's your position? 300 meters south of your position, sir. I can see enemy shooters on the rooftops. There was a pause. Chen, what the hell are you doing here? My job, sir. She found cover behind a low wall and set up her rifle. The M110 felt like an old friend in her hands. She extended the bipod, checked her scope, and began to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, let the heart beat slow. The first target was on the northeast rooftop, firing an AK-47 down into the compound where the SEALs were pinned. Sarah centered the crosshairs on his chest, compensated for wind and distance, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she saw the man fall. Good hit, Torres said over the radio. Northwest roof, 2 shooters. Sarah shifted her aim. Found the first target. Fired. He dropped. The second shooter realized what was happening and ducked behind a wall. Sarah waited, patient. Her instructors at sniper school had taught her that patience was a sniper's greatest weapon. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Then the shooter made his mistake. He leaned out, trying to get an angle on the SEALs below. Sarah fired. He fell! Chen, you're clear! Morrison's voice came over the radio, and for the first time there was no mockery in it. We're moving to the LZ. Keep us covered. Through her scope, Sarah watched the SEALs move. They carried their wounded between them, leapfrogging from cover to cover. Torres was in front, Morrison in the rear. More Taliban fighters appeared, trying to cut them off. Sarah fired methodically, each shot deliberate. She wasn't trying to kill everyone, just to keep them from getting a clear shot at the team. A bullet cracked past her head, so close she felt the air move. She rolled to new cover, set up again, and found the shooter. An older man with a gray beard firing from a window. She put the crosshairs on him and hesitated. He was somebody's father. Somebody's grandfather, maybe. But he was trying to kill her teammates. She fired. Chen, we're at the LZ, Torres called. Fall back. The birds inbound. Sarah grabbed her rifle and ran. Behind her, more Taliban fighters were emerging from buildings, converging on the extraction point. She could hear the helicopter now, the beautiful sound of those rotors getting closer. She was 50 meters from the team when she saw Morrison go down. He'd been hit in the shoulder, spun around by the impact. He tried to get up, but his arm wouldn't work right. Another SEAL grabbed him, but they were exposed out in the open. A Taliban fighter appeared on a rooftop, raising an RPG launcher. Sarah dropped to one knee, brought her rifle up. The range was nearly 400 meters. The target was moving. The wind was gusting. It was an impossible shot. She took it anyway. The rifle cracked. Through the scope, she saw the RPG launcher fall from the man's hands as he crumpled backward. Holy! Morrison's voice trailed off over the radio. The helicopter touched down, its guns blazing to provide cover. The SEALs loaded their wounded and scrambled aboard. Sarah was the last one in, hands reaching down to pull her up. As the helicopter climbed away from the compound, she finally let herself breathe. Morrison was staring at her, his good hand pressed against his bleeding shoulder. That shot, he said. 400 meters, moving target, bad wind. I couldn't have made that shot. Sarah said nothing. She was shaking now, adrenaline draining away. Torres put a hand on her shoulder. You saved us, Chen. All of us. The helicopter carried them back to base as the sun began to set, painting the Afghan sky in shades of orange and red. Below, the compound grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Sarah closed her eyes and thought about all the things she had carried, all the weight that had brought her to this moment. Maybe she thought she had been carrying it all for a reason. The debriefing lasted 3 hours. Sarah sat at a table in the operations center, telling the story again and again. How many shooters? What positions? Every shot she had taken. Lieutenant Commander Torres corroborated every detail. So did the other SEALs, even Morrison, who sat with his arm in a sling, his shoulder bandaged. When it was finally over, Captain Webb pulled Sarah aside. "I'm recommending you for a Bronze Star with Valor," he said quietly. "What you did today, that was extraordinary." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "I was just doing my job, sir." "No," Webb said firmly. "You went above and beyond your job. You saved the lives of 7 Navy SEALs, including 3 wounded men. That's not carrying ammo, Specialist Chen. That's heroism." That night, the team gathered in their common area. It was unusual for support personnel to be invited, but Torres had insisted. Morrison stood up, his good arm raising a can of near beer, the non-alcoholic kind they were allowed on base. "I need to say something," he announced. "I've been an asshole." A few chuckles rippled through the room. "No, seriously," Morrison continued, looking at Sarah. "I judged Chen from day one. Decided she wasn't one of us because she didn't go through Bud-S, because she was support, because she was a woman." He paused. "I was wrong. About all of it." Sarah felt her face flush. "Chen saved my life today," Morrison went on. "Made a shot I'm not sure I could have made under fire without hesitation. She's a better shooter than half the guys in this room, and she's got more heart than all of us combined." He raised his can higher. "To Chen, a real operator. To Chen," the others echoed. Sarah blinked back tears. She wouldn't cry, not here. Not now. Torres came over and sat beside her. "You know," he said quietly, "I put in for you to join this team because I read your file. I knew what you could do. But they wouldn't let you on the active roster because of politics. Because of bureaucracy," he smiled. "Guess you just rewrote the rules." Over the next few days, word spread through the base. The ammo mule who became a hero. The woman who saved SEAL Team 6. Sarah tried to downplay it, but the story had a life of its own. A week later, she was called to the command building. She expected another debriefing, maybe more paperwork for the medal recommendation. Instead, she found herself standing before a video screen. On it was a 2-star admiral calling from JSOC headquarters in North Carolina. "Specialist Chen," the admiral said, "I've reviewed the after-action reports from Operation Copper Dagger. I've also reviewed your complete service record, your marksmanship scores, your performance evaluations." He paused. "How would you feel about a transfer?" Sarah's heart skipped. "Sir, we're forming a new unit. Mixed gender, multi-service, focused on precision operations. We need shooters like you, real ones." The admiral's expression was serious. "It won't be easy. You'll have to prove yourself all over again. But I think you're ready." Sarah thought about Sacramento, about carrying groceries and carrying her brother's dreams, about carrying ammunition for men who didn't think she belonged. She thought about that moment on the rooftop, the impossible shot, the feeling of knowing she could do something no one expected. "When do I start, sir?" she asked. The admiral smiled. "That's what I wanted to hear." 3 months later, Sarah stood on a different base, in a different desert, with a different team. But she wasn't carrying ammunition anymore. She was carrying her rifle. The mission brief was straightforward. High-value target, compound infiltration, potential hostage situation. Sarah listened carefully, studying the satellite photos, calculating distances and angles. "Chen," the team leader said, "you'll take overwatch position here." He pointed to a building 800 meters from the target. "Think you can handle it?" Sarah looked at the map, then at her new teammates. They were watching her, but not with doubt. With respect. She thought about all the miles she had traveled, all the weight she had carried, all the people who had told her what she couldn't do, and she smiled. "I've got this," she said, because Sarah Chen had learned something important during that firefight in Afghanistan. She had learned that the heaviest thing you can carry isn't ammunition or gear or equipment. It's other people's doubts, and she had finally set that weight down.